All right, let's talk about the future. I mean, have you ever really stopped to think about what the world will actually look like in, say, 2040? We're about to dive into this incredible dialogue between a futurist and a top strategist. They basically mapped out all these hidden forces that are already shaping our world. And look, this isn't science fiction. This is like getting a sneak peek at the blueprint for the world we're all going to be living in.
And this quote from Clara, the futurist, really just nails it. She says it's about preparing for a reality that's already unfolding. The future isn't some distant thing we're all just waiting around for. Nope, the seeds of 2040 are being planted as we speak, right now. So the real question for all of us is, do we actually get the landscape we're building? Because, understanding it is the first step to getting through it.
So let's break this down. We're essentially listening in on a conversation between our futurist, Clara, and a strategist named Miguel. And the key to all their insights, the thing that let them cut through all the noise, was this really powerful analytical framework they used. Think of it as our lens. It's going to help us see all these super complex changes in a much clearer way.
Okay, so here's their toolkit. It's a framework called STEEP. That's S-T-E-A-P. And you can pretty much think of it as a scanner for the future. It looks at change across 5 key areas: social, technological, economic, environmental, and political. But, and this is the part both experts really hammered home, you absolutely cannot look at these things by themselves. They're all tangled up together, part of one big, complex, interconnected system.
So here's how we're going to walk through this. First up, the human experience. Then, the augmented reality, followed by the value equation and the new mandates. And we'll wrap it all up with a look at how the future is built. Let's get started. All right, so first up, the social side of things, what they call the human experience. And Clara and Miguel kick things off here because, look, no matter how wild the tech gets, it always comes back to people, right? People are at the center of everything. And right now, the very definition of our jobs, our careers, our society, it's all being completely rewritten. So the first huge trend they pointed to is something they call the demography of experience. And what that really means is people are living and working a lot longer. That whole idea of retiring at 65, yeah, that's pretty much going out the window. We're talking about a world where it's normal to have 4, maybe even 5 different generations all working together. Just think about that for a second. The mix of skills, the different expectations, it's going to be a whole new world. Now check this out. Less than 2 years. What is that? Well, according to them, that is the projected half-life of a technical skill by 2035. I mean, let that sink in. A skill you master today could be half as valuable in less than 2 years. That's kind of mind-blowing. It basically means lifelong learning isn't just some nice-to-have HR buzzword anymore. It's a flat-out survival strategy.
So if skills are expiring that fast, what happens next? Well, you get a whole bunch of other trends popping up. First, learning has to be constant, and it's probably going to be driven by AI to keep up. Next, hybrid and remote work, that's not a perk anymore. It's just the baseline expectation. In a world where it's hard to know what's real, transparency becomes the new gold standard for trust. And maybe the biggest shift, the whole idea of a job starts to change. Miguel talked about these virtual micro-workforces, basically teams of experts from all over the world that come together for one project, knock it out of the park, and then disappear.
Okay, but with all this incredible change, there's always a risk, right? There's always that one what-if scenario. So what's the one unpredictable wildcard that could just bring all of this social progress to a screeching halt?
And here's the wild card they were both worried about: a global AI trust crisis. Just imagine, a huge scandal hits the news. It turns out the AI being used for everything, hiring people, giving out loans, maybe even in the justice system, is massively biased. Public trust in automation would just evaporate overnight. The backlash could be so huge, it could set us back years, maybe even a decade.
And that fear of an AI crisis is the perfect segue into our next dimension, technology. Because according to Clara, tech is really the engine driving all of this change. It's creating what she calls our new augmented reality. The biggest trend here is what they call human-machine integration, and it's a total shift in how we think about technology. Miguel put it really well. He said we're moving past just using machines as tools, and we're starting to actually partner with them. So the future workforce, it's not just going to be human, it's going to be augmented. This seamless mix of human ingenuity and powerful machine intelligence. And you can already see the pieces of this augmented reality falling into place all around us. You've got generative AI, which is moving beyond just doing basic tasks and is starting to automate complex judgments.
Then there are low-code platforms, which are basically giving everyone the power to innovate and build things. You've got blockchain, which is a key piece for building that transparency and trust we talked about. And finally, security is no longer an afterthought. It's got to be built into everything from the ground up.
So this hyper-connected, augmented world, it sounds powerful, but it's also incredibly fragile. It has to have a weak spot, right? So what's its Achilles heel?
The wild card here is terrifyingly simple: the complete collapse of our global digital infrastructure. Think about it. One massive, super sophisticated cyber attack could literally bring everything to a standstill. Entire economies paralyzed. I mean, we've built our entire modern world on this digital foundation, and that makes it our greatest strength, but also our biggest vulnerability.
Okay, so when you have this much technological disruption, it's only natural that it's going to completely shake up our economic rules. It's forcing a total rethink of how we even define and measure value. And that leads us to what the experts called the new value equation. And this really illustrates the shift perfectly. The old model was all about paying for hours worked. The new model, it's about paying for outcomes, for results. We're moving away from rigid, fixed contracts and toward flexible subscription models for, well, everything. Everything as a service. And instead of companies working in their own little silos, we're seeing the rise of huge integrated platforms. It's a completely different way of thinking about business. And this new equation creates a really interesting tension. On one side, you have these massive platform economies becoming these super dominant hubs. But at the same time, it also creates space for small, super specialized niche providers to thrive. Then you've got these weak signals, things that are just starting to bubble up. Stuff like paying people in cryptocurrency, or giving employees access to their salary whenever they want it, on demand.
So what's the economic wildcard that could throw a wrench in all this? A major national currency crisis. The experts were clear on this. Something like that wouldn't stay local. It would set off a global domino effect, forcing a complete overhaul of international tax laws. It would stress test every single multinational company on the planet.
All right, last but not least, Clara and Miguel grouped the environmental and political forces together. And the reasoning was really smart. They said these things aren't just trends to keep an eye on anymore. Nope, they are quickly becoming the new, non-negotiable rules of the game.
So what are these new rules? Well, first off, sustainability is mandatory. It's not a nice-to-have for your annual report anymore. It's a must-do. That means real-time ESG reporting will just be standard practice. Next, data privacy stops being a policy and starts being treated like a basic civil right. And here's a wild one. Regulation itself could become automated, with AI making sure everyone is playing by the rules in real time.
And the political wild card in all of this? A sudden legislative ban. Imagine governments getting really concerned about data security or economic stability, and they just decide, you know what? No more outsourcing core stuff like finance and accounting. A single law like that could literally flip entire global industries on their head overnight.
Okay, so let's tie all of this together, because here's the most important takeaway from this whole conversation. None of these forces, social, tech, economic, any of them exist in their own little bubble. As Miguel kept saying, it's all one big interconnected ecosystem. You poke one area and you're going to see ripples everywhere else. A tech change causes a social change, which causes an economic change. You get the idea.
And that brings us to this final thought from Miguel, which I think is just brilliant. Don't predict the future, prototype it. The whole point of this exercise, of looking at all these forces, isn't to get a perfect crystal ball reading of 2040. The point is to understand the playing field so we can get in the game and actively build the future we want to see. The future isn't something that just washes over us. It's something we make, we create it, starting today. So yeah, don't just wait for it, go out and prototype it.